educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here is your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
I thank you very much for tuning in today. This show is, I'm not sure how to take it because this gentleman, I've had the privilege of speaking to him prior to, and I don't think I've had anyone that changed my mindset in such a drastic way, in a very impactful way as this gentleman has in quite some time. I've learned from everybody that I speak to, but this gentleman has really dug in a little deeper, and I really appreciate him, his time, his energy in that, and he doesn't understand how much of a inspiration he has been to me thus far. So this individual, he is a renowned performance coach, best-selling author, and motivational speaker. He transformed lives by empowering individuals to unlock their potential and live with passion. He is the author of Time Isn't the Problem, You Are. He offers practical strategies for mastering time and achieving extraordinary results. He shares his expertise and tips to help you overcome challenges and create a life of significance. I thank you very much for tuning in today, and I am truly honored, I am truly humbled by having this gentleman on the show today. Chad Cooper, thank you very much for coming on the show.
It is an absolute pleasure, sir. I am excited about being able to serve your audience.
So we're going to jump all the way in. One of the things that we had talked about off camera last week, things like that, is overcoming obstacles, right? So how would you suggest for someone to overcome obstacles that sometimes we don't see that there's any way around it whatsoever?
Well, I think a great place for us to start with that, Maurice, is the conversation we were having before we jumped on here. And that is when a resource is presented from us and then taken away. So in this case, we have an obstacle. Let's say it's a wall that's in front of us. When we run out of resources, it's an opportunity for us to get resourceful, right? And we need to recognize first that we have something that's blocking us or preventing us. And often that recognition begins with, in many scenarios, an emotional wall or an emotional obstacle that is getting in the way. And so how do we recognize that? Well, it requires us to have some self-awareness. It requires us to know which emotions we're choosing to experience. And when it gets in the way, it can often lead to mental health issues like depression. Well, we all experience mental health issues from time to time. That's normal. That's part of being human.
Right.
Mental illness is something completely different. So when we see that, depression is the denial of our emotions. And so instead of resisting that obstacle, the actual first step is to acknowledge I'm stuck in the road, or I got this thing in front of me, right? But how many of us look in a mirror, right? So if we just use the analogy of looking in the mirror, we're like, I got to change the image in the mirror. Well, we know how to change the image in the mirror, but we convince ourselves that it doesn't begin with us. So obstacles in the road almost always begin with introspection and recognizing, similar to the name of my book, is if we can't recognize that we're part of the problem, then we can't recognize we're part of the solution. The second thing in there is for us to get resourceful. So when we only have two options, well, I can try to move forward or I can sit still. It's actually not an option at all. It's a dilemma. So we need at least three or more options to truly get resourceful. And so Napoleon Hill is a great example, really one of the best at what he says is the 6 steps to effective decision making. So if we look at what those 6 6 steps to effective decision making. One of the problems we run into is we see an obstacle and we forget. I think it was who was the greatest football coach in history of the Green Bay Packers? My
Lombardi.
favorite. Thank
Lombardi.
you,
Mm-hmm.
Vince Lombardi. I believe it was Vince Lombardi that said an obstacle is what you see when you take your eyes off the goal line.
Mm-hmm.
A defense is what you see when you take your eyes off the goal line. So we have to ask ourselves, to get resourceful, is first question is what's our outcome? See, we've been
Mm-hmm.
trained by society to focus on activity, but COVID gave us an opportunity when all our children had to get out of school. My son came to me and he was in his like senior year at the time. And he said, Dad, if I get all my homework done, it only takes me 2 hours. Can I have the rest of the day? And that's a resourceful kid, because he went,
Mm-hmm.
if I achieve the outcome, then I'm free to do whatever else. So we have to ask ourselves, Maurice, what's the outcome? What's the result you're after? And why do you want to achieve it?
Mm-hmm.
Then we can go down and suspend judgment and look at what are all of our options, even those that may initially sound stupid or far-fetched or unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
Got to get them out of our head.
Hmm.
See, it's when we judge ourselves, that's what prevents the resourcefulness.
Hmm. So, and listen to what you're talking about. It reminds me of a quote by Denzel Washington. He said, "Don't confuse movement with progress." And so I think I hear that, and that's what I'm reminded of. But in that, sometimes we get caught up uh, understanding what is the forest versus the trees mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're so caught up, and sometimes we see what our desired outcome might be, but we don't really understand it. So how do we get out of the forest or the tree mentality? Because that's all we see, that's all we hear, that's all we feel. How do we get out of that space?
Well, yeah, Denzel Washington, he's known for saying several pretty smart things, actually. He's a pretty intelligent guy. Another way of saying that is it's kind of like an octopus on roller skates. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of movement, but not in any particular effective direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so we confuse activity for outcome and we end up just burnt out without any actual result.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that process of that, we need to take a look at and look at where are there other successes? Who are other people that have done this well? And one of
Mm-hmm.
those is J.K. Rowling. She is the author of course, the famous Harry Potter
Right.
series.
Yeah.
And most people know that she was on welfare and she was rags to riches.
Mm-hmm.
But what most people don't know is that she actually wrote the ending of Harry Potter first
Mm-hmm.
and then wrote it backwards. Where else do we see evidence of that? Well, how about running a marathon? See, when we choose to go run, if you're crazy enough to do that, like I did for a long time, we start with what's the distance.
Mm-hmm.
Once we know the distance, then we can say, okay, I want to run a marathon. Okay, those are typically in the fall and in the spring.
Right.
Well,
Right.
fall's behind us. So I guess I'm running in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
We can go out and research. So again, it comes back to the biggest mistake that I see is that people don't declare the outcome. And
Mm-hmm.
Denzel Washington is spot on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't mistake activity for results.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we know the distance, then we can write the training plan backwards. Oh, week 19, I need to be at this distance. Week 18, I need to be at this distance. And it's much easier to draw the map and work the destination backwards than trying to go forward. I
Hmm.
mean, think about that. If you want to go from where you're at to Miami, Florida,
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to be warm, we have to first pick the destination.
Mm.
Then we have to know, like when you go to the mall. Remember, when you used to go to the mall and there's a big kiosk and it had a big red dot on it. What did that dot
Mm.
represent?
With the I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry.
You remember you go to the shopping mall and there's a
Yeah.
big red dot that say you are here,
Right. Right.
right? So yeah, we need to know our destination, but we also need to know where are we starting from. Let's be
Mm-hmm.
realistic. Let's not be too hard on ourselves. Let's not
Right.
be too easy on ourselves. So then we can then look at that and say, okay, when do I need to be there?
Mm-hmm.
So many people forget to put, they're like, oh, third quarter, I'm going to do my New Year's resolutions. No, like, how about November 23rd, 2025?
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty specific date. And the mind goes, oh man, Maurice he's committed. Must be real,
Mm-hmm.
right? So by doing those three things, we ensure the odds of success go up by 80%. The
Hmm.
last question, there's some steps in there, but the most important question, most often missed, in again, this is Napoleon Hill, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's been around, well, he's long gone, but his works have been around for a long time.
Right.
He says the most missed opportunity in question is asking the question, what are you willing to give in order to achieve the outcome that you desire? If you don't ask that
Mm.
question, the price of admission is going to be a lot higher than you ever anticipated. So we have to say, what am I willing to give? What am I not willing to give? I've got
Mm-hmm.
3 kids. I'll give one. Okay.
Yeah.
Question is which one? It depends on
Right.
which one's
I
acting
know,
up.
right? Which one I don't like that week.
That's right. Exactly. Or it could be the hour,
Right. But and listen to what you're talking about. What are we willing to give up? A lot of times, some of us don't like to be uncomfortable, right? I have
Hmm.
I have been in that place, in those places where I didn't like being uncomfortable. Like you said, whether we're settling or whatever it is, I know for myself, I am very uncomfortable right now. I think I told you off camera that, hey, I don't sleep because I know what I'm working towards. And I'm excited. I'm really more or less excited about where I'm going and where I'm headed. But a lot of
Hmm.
times we don't understand that. And so how do we get out of that space of being comfortable, um, and to get to what our dreams or our desired outcomes are?
Think about any leader that's accomplished anything.
Mm-hmm.
If you walk away with nothing else on today's conversation, outcome, 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 you got to declare your outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Winston Churchill knew their outcome was to defeat the Nazi regime. That was the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. King started with the outcome of a dream. That one day his children would be judged by their character and not the color of their skin.
Mm-hmm.
Kennedy, we choose to go to the moon. He didn't just say we choose to go to space. We choose to go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. So we have to be clear and declare our outcome. Second is it needs to be a dream. It needs to be inspiring. It needs to be so inspiring that we go, yeah, I have to go do this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then we can look at that and add in some of the other pieces in there. But when we do that piece, we can also realize what are the resources that I'm going to need to take along the way. And I'll just leave it at that for the moment.
Okay.
Could go so many places.
Yeah. Right.
And here's the thing with this, Maurice, is that so many people are like, okay, got it. What else?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how about you start with that and do that? There's an old story about a pastor that keeps on saying the same sermon week after week after week, and his congregation comes up to him and says, Pastor, I don't know if you noticed, but you keep on saying the same sermon for the last 6 weeks. He says, yeah, I've noticed. And they said, well, why? He says, I'm waiting for you to apply it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're always, it's like, okay, what's next? What's next? How about you just start with getting clear on the outcome? There's an old African proverb: walk as far as you can see, and when you get there, you'll be able to see further. So in terms of the discomfort, walk as far as you can see. Wow, that sounds uncomfortable. Well, the thing that I learned when I was in the Marine Corps is a hard lesson in life So if you want to accomplish anything worthwhile, it's going to require the ingredient of pain. Now we can look at
Hmm.
that like a great cookie, right? What's your
Hmm.
favorite kind of cookie?
Chocolate chip.
Chocolate chip. I mean, duh.
Technically,
We got
yeah.
nuts in it. Dang nuts. I mean, get,
No, I don't do nuts in the cookie. I'll do nuts in the
you're a
brownie though.
purist. Okay, you're a purist. Got it. All right. Keep it clean.
Yep.
Pain is one of the hard acceptance that Americans accept is the formula for success. It's
Hmm.
one of the ingredients, but let's make it the ingredient of salt ratio rather than flour or sugar, right? You get the wrong
Mm-hmm.
ratio, it's going to taste horrible.
Hmm.
If you leave it out, it's not going to turn out right. So in the Marine Corps, I learned and they taught me that for you to win and succeed, pain's going to come along for the ride, but the trick is just a little bit is to learn to get comfortable being uncomfortable, Maurice.
Hmm.
That's how winning is done. That's how growth happens. The problem is that we're like, oh, New Year's resolution, I'm going to go out and I'm going to lift 400 pounds one time. And it's like, great. If you do that once a month, you're just going to be in pain and you're never going to get the results. It's about consistency and
Hmm.
persistence.
Hmm.
So when you go to the gym, if you keep doing the same weight and it's not uncomfortable, you're not tearing
Right.
your muscle. Now we don't
Right.
want to rip or injure, and so we do a little bit more, a
Hmm.
little bit more.
Hmm.
And I've got an app is better than I was on the Ironman circuit at 33 major sponsors, had some world famous coaches, right?
Hmm.
And the best coach I've ever had is a computer app.
Mm.
So I don't get anything from it, but I use an app called FitBod.
Okay.
And what it does is it goes in and it measures and said, oh, you did upper body, you did these muscles, and you did, 87% pushing on it. So those are needing to be recovered. Here's the muscles that have recovered. Your next workout's going to include those.
Mm.
Oh, you've been
Hmm.
lifting this much weight. We're going to add a half a pound. And so it knows to just stack on a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. That's how winning is done. And
Mm.
pretty soon, you've walked as far as you can see and you'll be able to see further.
Mm.
That's how we make it happen. That's how in the Marines, what I learned was when the brain says, ouch, this is painful, it sucks, stop, the body is capable of 20 times more. So if you look at Navy SEALs, go
Hmm.
through Bud School, the first thing they have to do is 1,000 push-ups. Dude, if you focus on 1,000 push-ups, you are never going to get there. That's how they wash out so many and
Hmm.
just on the first thing. So how do you do it? Break it down into bite-sized pieces, 100 push-ups, then another 100 push-ups, then another 100 push-ups. Then maybe it's 50 and 50 and 25 until you get to one more push-up. And eventually
Hmm.
you're going to hit 1,000.
Right.
So it's about staying focused on the present, not too far in the future. Don't live in the past. It's about what's in front of me. One more.
Hmm. I think one of the things that we tend to focus on is that pain, and we don't understand that pain is temporary, right? And that shows our growth. So I think changing that mindset um, of hey, I'm hurting right now, and I'm using this example of my grandmother-in-law, where she wants to get up out the chair, right? But she's
Yep.
in so much pain. She's like, oh, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, and so now she's flopping back down in the chair. So now the physical therapist is giving up on her because she's not moving, she's not working those muscles and all those type of things. So, and all I could tell is like, hey, pain is temporary, grandma. I'm like, come on, Nana, get
So
up, get
here's
up.
yeah, let's help Graham with 3 lessons here. One is a real straightforward hard truth. And my drill instructors told me like 35 years ago, pain is God's megaphone to tell you to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
Pain is telling you that you're still alive. Be thankful, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we look at pain as something to avoid, but pain is telling us something, saying that you're making progress.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe that's a little too harsh, a little too, hardcore for you. You're not meant for the service. Okay. The other is to look at it and say, when I had a hip replacement and they rolled me back into my room and They're like, okay, let's go. I'm like, what? They're like, you're walking down to the end of the hall. I'm like, I just had a hip replacement here.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, move.
Right. They need you to move. Right. Mm-hmm.
Because that's how you heal. You got to lean into it. So how do we do that? Well, I'll give you the lesson of Eckhart Tolle. When I did my first Ironman, we had a headwind of like, I don't know, 30-mile-per-hour winds at some point. And my legs were trashed after I got off the cycling. Now understand an Ironman is 2.4 miles swimming, which is a long distance swimming, 112 miles biking, and a full marathon, 26.2 miles. So after already doing the swim and the bike, now I have to go run a full marathon. And I'm running, and I see these woods, and it's by the water on the Great Lakes, and I'm like, I could just go over there and hide, splash some water on my face like 4 hours later, and come out. I'm exhausted. And I went, and nobody would know any difference, Marines. And I said, but I would.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I never did it. I never actually earned it. Now, it's a good thing I did, because they had little sensors and markers along the way. You wouldn't know that it was cheating. But what came to mind was Eckhart Tolle. And he said, just kind of hold out your hand and open it up and imagine that you've got a little sphere of the earth in your hand. He says, that's pain. When you can hold it in your hand, you can see that it's separate from you. It's not you. If you're going to do something remarkable, you're going to do something crazy like an Ironman. You have to accept that pain's coming along for the ride, but it doesn't have to be part of you. So you can take that and say, okay, I'm going to put that in my pocket and let's go for a journey. And that's where he says the pain body awakens. But in Buddhism, we also know that this too shall pass. So how do we allow that to happen? Well, pain is the formula to success. It's one of the key ingredients. Suffering, however, is optional. And suffering are the stories we tell ourselves about the pain. So give up the story and embrace the discomfort. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. So for grandma, we need to break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces so that she can build that muscle over time and not give up. It was too much too soon. That's how we win. But we got to stay persistent. We got to be consistent with it. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. It makes total sense. And those are the type of things that we talk to her about one step at a time. One step being, let's stand up first, or whatever, whatever it might be. Those baby steps, just to say, hey, all right, you're standing up now. Let's do this or that, whatever. So I totally understand where you're coming from, and trying to coach her through. We need you to walk a little bit, especially if you want to continue to go out to the casino. So you have another outcome, right? There's something else that you want to do. So, and everyone's not going to be able to take you all the time with your wheelchair, things like that. So let's work on this mobility piece. So, but Chad, I thank you very much for that idea and how to work through these things. Where can someone talk to you and find your content so they understand, hey, I have these challenges, but now I need to turn these into opportunities. So where can they find you and talk to you and things like that?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I keep it real simple. Just go to chadeCooper.com. Chad, E is an echo, Cooper.com. And you can find everything that you need right there. Reach out, schedule some time with me. You can look at some books. I've got some free content on there. Whatever you need is probably sitting right there, but reach out. Don't be afraid. People often is like, oh, I can't email. Yeah, you can. I might be a little bit delayed in responding to it, depending on what's going on. But, I will absolutely respond to it. That's how we grow is we reach out and ask. Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots you never take.
Right.
So take the shot. Start with making it easy. Go out to the website. If it's intriguing, take a step.
Nice. So we thank you very much for that information. So I have to ask you my world famous question. My would you rather question. Would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road? Come on, Chad. Come on, play it all, Chad. Come on, Chad.
Make me play this game. I don't want to play this game.
All right. So if you don't want to answer that question, answer this question then, right? If
No,
you
no,
had,
no, I'm going to answer the
okay.
question because it's an intriguing question because my scientific math brain goes, well, do I pick the fork in the road? Your odds are 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
And I like those odds because you have to commit to one path, right? If we want to win in life, you can't have one foot on one path and one on the other.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of the Alice in Wonderland when she comes to a fork in the road and she doesn't know which way to go. She's stuck, and the Cheshire Cat comes down and says, "Where's it that you would like to go?" And she says, "I really don't know."
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Well, in that case, either path will do." So remember, that comes back to the very beginning. What's your outcome?
Right.
So if you know what your outcome is, then you should know which path that you're going to take. So I like those odds. I like that because it requires clarity. It requires me to commit to an outcome.
Right.
That being said, 3 doors, you have a third of a chance of picking the goat behind the door or whatever you got behind the door, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't like it, I'm just going to close the door and open the other one until I get it. You didn't say I can only choose one door and not keep choosing.
I did.
So I'm going to, it's about finding the loopholes in there.
So I had one guest who talked about the loophole in the doors. They wanted the door to be glass. Somebody else said they wanted the doors to be acrylic so they could see what's behind those doors. Even when it came to the fork in the road, they wanted the road to be on a hill so they could see what was on those roads going down. So it's up to your imagination. I didn't put any parameters on there.
Look at that resourcefulness.
And then one
That's
person
amazing.
gave the analogy, and I have to remember the exact words for it, but he gave the thought of Star Trek, where I think he said it was Spock who said, paraphrasing, you gave me 2 options, but there's always a third option. So even though I presented those 2, there's something else that you can do. Again, like you said, being resourceful. So I thank you very much for playing along with me, Chad.
It was fun. Frustrating, but fun. Made my brain hurt.
And now I'm gonna ask you one more question because you said that one made your brain hurt, but I got another fun question for you real quick. So if you can choose anyone to do a duet with in the world, living or dead, who would that be? A singing duet.
A duet.
Yes.
Oh man. I mean, I'm a big fan of classical music, and there's not a whole lot of singing in classical music.
Right,
So,
right.
obviously, they're going to have to carry and drown me out. Okay? So
That's funny.
people are going to be paying to say, please make them stop, and don't ever say that. You know who it's going to be is real simple. Actually, I was going through Sinatra, then I was going through George Strait. People who've are legends, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I choose, Bono.
Ah, nice one.
Yep.
That's a nice one.
Now people are like, dude, you're old.
But you don't have to be like that type of music because in all reality, it's being recycled anyway.
There you go. Yep.
To be honest, because everybody's being remixed and everything else, half the time you don't even realize what you're listening to.
There you go.
So, but yeah, Chad, but I thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Fun. And I'm hoping that it gave some food for thought, not just for people to be inspired or motivated, but that it creates some lasting transformation. If you do nothing else, Maurice, start with the outcome and your odds of success are going to go way up.
Cool. I appreciate that, Chad. Again, I respect you, and I thank you very much for all that you've provided for me personally. Of course, everyone, the information that Chad provided will be in the show notes, and I thank you very much for listening today, and I will talk to you a little later.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?
Well, the camera's not.